Welcome everybody to the NVIDIA Omniverse live stream. As you can see, we've got some very special guests, a couple regulars and a non-regular here. Richard, thank you for joining us today, and Ashley just hot off her stream earlier today. And we also have another NVIDIA developer here, Devin LaFontaine, who is going to help us create a physics toy using this asset he pulled in from Maya using OpenUSD. And he's going to show and tell how to leverage Action Graph, which is a part of the OmniGraph system, and USD to create a really cool toy. So anybody who's been wondering how Action Graph works, this is a great live stream to watch. Feel free to post your questions and comments in the chat. And we are going to go over a couple of quick announcements first. And then we'll dive into what you're seeing on the screen here now in a few minutes. Don't give it away yet, Devin. We're gonna go ahead and hit play so people can see the action. But first, let's go over some quick announcements, starting with the biggie, of course, which is GTC coming up in only a few months. It kind of comes up on you really quick here, but March 17th to 21st, most of us will be there. I know Richard and Ashley will be there. Devin, are you going to GTC? Do you know?
Maybe. I think someone asked me if I could go, so I'm just trying to see if I can find babysitters.
Well, I hope you do. I think it would be great. Anyone in the community is going, please let us know if you'd like to meet up with us individually. You could shoot me an email, edmar@nvidia.com, and I'll be happy to pair you up with any developers on the team. We're going to be there for a private meeting. It's going to be a lot of fun. The GTC page is up and updated with the latest information on early bird pricing, and sessions and speakers. It's really easy to check out. You just go to nvidia.com/GTC. And I think we have some information here on some of the key topics. Look at that smorgasbord of beautiful information. I think a lot of the stuff we've covered on different live streams. So it's going to be really fun to try to meet and engage with some of the users on this stuff. Richard and Ashley, so do you guys know what you're doing there specifically yet, or that's still being worked out? I know Richard will probably be doing some community stuff.
Yeah, for me, it's still being worked out. I'm definitely going to be teaching some workshops, maybe doing a couple of talks, maybe a demo again like I did at SIGGRAPH. So I'll be there doing something, that's for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you had a great time at SIGGRAPH, if I remember correctly. You had a packed house.
Yeah, we had a packed house, and I even showcased the Racer RTX demo and got to meet a lot of people on the floor. So I hope to be able to do something like that again. It's really nice to be out there because I meet so many community members, and it's funny because I'll be talking and they'll be like, wait, where do I know you? And then they'll realize that they're a part of the community and that they've seen me either on the Discord or in live streams, and it's fun to connect people with that, like that.
It's such a great way to to build those relationships with the people that we've been working with, but virtually for so long. So SIGGRAPH was probably a nice taste of that, but GTC should even be better. So hope everyone out there can go, as many people as possible. Don't worry if you can't make it for one reason or another. We're going to try to do as much as we can to support the virtual experience as well. That's something Richard and I and the other folks on the community team are working on right now. So we'll keep you updated on those things, but definitely check out the page and sign up for any announcements. Here's some more information on the speakers. Of course, Jensen's there. He would never miss this. He's going to have a really fantastic keynote. So speaking of virtually, so obviously the keynote will be broadcast to everybody worldwide. But I think it would be awesome to be able to hear some of these great speakers live and in person, ask some of your own questions. We have the new replicator release is now available. Speaking of synthetic data generation, which we covered last week, definitely feel free to post on the forums or on the Omniverse Discord server if you have any questions with other users or with developers. We'll try to get you the help we can. I know Richard and Ashley both have been super active helping users both on the forums and on Discord. So great to see more people hanging out there. Latest release of a Marmoset tool bag is out with an improved USD functionality. So definitely, and I think we've seen some nice examples of people leveraging this already online. So feel free to share your stuff. We've got a great channel on Discord server if you want to show off your work. I think it's called Share Your Work. We also have an Omniverse gallery page. You can go if you want to kind of, if you're feeling less shy and you want the whole world to see it, you can post it there. But we'd love to see some of the work that's coming out of these great updates of tools in the ecosystem. So Halloween is over, but not forgotten. Ashley was sharing off her great trick-or-treating experience earlier today. Everyone else had a great time. We loved seeing all of your seasonal art challenge submissions. So now we're shifting into November. So really cool to see what you guys come up with, more of a kind of a Thanksgiving vibe or just a fall season vibe. By the way, let me know if my voice goes all robo, and I will. I'll
You'll see me laughing hysterically if that happens because I can't
I
handle
thought
it.
so.
Now you can reuse those pumpkins you used for the spooky Halloween and refashion them for, you know, festival, fall.
Yeah.
Can I just add a pumpkin to the background I have here? And
You
then
can
it's
totally
fall?
just add a pumpkin.
Yeah.
Put a
Turn the
cornstalk
skull
in
into
there.
a pumpkin.
I think so. If you haven't seen some of the stuff online, just go to social media and look for the hashtag Seasonal Art Challenge, and you'll be able to see. We also have a bunch of really amazing creators who've been posting stuff pretty regularly. Funky Boy, aka Stephen Tong, actually has done 4 submissions every week. He's been posting a new one. His most recent one was yesterday on LinkedIn. So check that out. It's really cool. We'll post it in the chat in case you missed it. And of course, we love telling everybody about the USD playlist we've got done by Aaron Luck here on the team. The latest one is about custom schemas. This is a free video playlist available on YouTube, obviously, where you can learn the latest and greatest information on how to leverage the superpowers of USD. So custom schemas is the latest theme. Check that out. And this is something Ashley has been actually a huge help on testing and doing some tutorials internally. What's all this about? What's RunUSD?
RunUSD is a validate service. So you upload your USDZ assets to make sure they're compatible with the latest of USD Composer and OpenUSD standards. And if it's not, it will tell you in a detailed document what is the issue, so you can go and update your assets and make sure that when you're sharing them to members of your team or with other assets that it's going to work without any errors. And we actually have a tool in USD Composer called the asset validate tool. So if you right click in the content browser on your USD file, you can actually validate your USD scene if any errors come up. Most of the errors, not all of them quite yet, but some of them, if you just select the error and then click fix, it will fix your error for you, and you can save that to your USD file. So really easy tool to use, and the video will be coming out soon so you can get a more detailed explanation on how to do that step by step.
That's cool. And I also noticed too, the errors are pretty legible, right? You can understand the errors for the most part.
Yeah. One of them that's really common you get is because of our Kit 105 update to material binding. And so older assets, maybe like 2-3 years old, don't have material binding APIs applied to them. So that's a common one you'll get with assets. And all you have to do is click fix in the asset tool validator. Asset validate tool, and if it adds the material binding API, and boom, you're done.
That's awesome. Speaking of boom, look who joined us in the chat. None other than Marcom 3D. What time is it there? I think it's like 4 a.m. or something. Marco, you must be double dosing on the coffee this morning, but great to see you. Okay, so thank you for that, Ashley. I don't think he does either. So really, really glad to have you here, Devin, with us. Special guest of honor. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your role here at NVIDIA and some of your background?
Yeah, I am the product manager for OmniGraph. So what that means is, while we have really smart engineers building all this technology, I kind of use it in a day-to-day sense and help prioritize which parts need fixing up and improvements, and talking to all the other PMs at NVIDIA who all need things in OmniGraph. We kind of have to put them all in line. So functionally what that means is I use this stuff kind of every day. So I'm in here building stuff, testing things out. My history before NVIDIA, I worked in game development as an artist and picked up on procedural kind of artwork and graph node-based stuff pretty early. So that's how I got here.
Well, we have one rule in this live stream. If you mention that you have a background in game development, you need to tell us what games you work on.
Let's see. which one do I want to I want to expose? I worked on a shooter called Planetside 2. That was a pretty fun project. It was like an
Yeah.
online, super massive one. That was a fun project. Yeah,
Well, that's
so look up
awesome.
that one.
All right. Well, we'll have to dig more into your IMDb later to find out the other hidden gems you've been working on. Okay, but you started explaining about OmniGraph, and for those of us in the audience or at NVIDIA who might not be familiar with OmniGraph is, and also how Action Graph kind of ties into OmniGraph, what is OmniGraph?
Yeah, so OmniGraph is what we call kind of the graph of graphs. It's kind of a framework and a system to build graphing solutions out of it. So you like right now, if you're in Composer, you're using something, you're not really using OmniGraph really directly, you're using stuff that's built out of OmniGraph. So in what we're going to be showing soon is Action Graph, and that's a type of OmniGraph that's based off of events and custom kind of triggering of those events. We have another graph type called like a push graph, which is not event-based. It's kind of just constantly does something all the time. That's more used for simulation stuff. I want to say the particle tools might be using OmniGraph also. So there's a lot of little bits of OmniGraph sprinkled around, but the most, I guess, the one we use, at least I use the most, is Action Graph because it's super tweakable and customizable, and you can kind of do a lot of interesting interactive kind of behaviors with it. I think Ashley's used it a few times too. I know we've chatted a couple times.
Yeah, I was bugging you for a while there.
Yeah. Do you ever use push graphs, or do you stay in Action Graph as well?
No, I don't use push graphs too much because I like being able to customize it when I want it to start, and I find that push graphs, like the flow uses push graph because it just starts it when you start the simulation, and I want to be able to say start when I want to start or start on an action.
Yeah, same.
Well, is it so? One thing I wanted to kind of ask about, because I've heard this said more than once, is that there is some kind of similarity to for people who might be familiar with the Unreal Engine by Epic to the Blueprint system and Action Graph. Is that a fair comparison? Or people familiar with Blueprints might be able to ramp up to Action Graph pretty easily? Or
yeah, that's probably the most direct kind of on ramp. Is we have a similar idea of execution. So like in a Blueprint, you'd have nodes that fire in a certain order, and when certain conditions are met, then they trigger, and that's kind of what action graphs are. Like this graph here, you just follow these white lines, and that's the order everything runs in. So if you're
Devin, would you say? Sorry, Devin,
yeah.
would you say that Action Graph is really a system for interactivity? Then is it a way to bring interactivity to your scenes?
Yeah, definitely more interactivity in the sense that you're waiting on input either from the user, like me clicking the mouse or whatever, or something happening in your stage. And it can create this demo we're going to walk through. You can create pretty dynamic, complicated looking stuff that would take like forever to keyframe and be really hard to change. If someone's, oh, that's too fast, I want it to be half as fast, right? You can just use action graph nodes and these kind of real-time interactive logic to get a lot of complicated looking behavior that's actually pretty easy.
Right.
That's a great, I think, Richard, you come up with a nice slogan for the marketing team, add interactivity to your scene. But actually, it's a good point because I also hear that, if you're not a programmer or that's not your main thing, that you can leverage Action Graph to do a lot of programmer-like things in a very visual kind of UI, visual AI. That's pretty fair to say as well. Like,
yeah, it's programming light. I think there's a lot of programming concepts that overlap with it. But if like looking at Python code is really intimidating, something like Action Graph's really way more accessible.
It's like logic Legos, right? Just snap the Legos together.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so let's talk about what you put together. We mentioned in the title of the live stream, this is all about creating a physics toy, very simply with Action Graph and USD. So, where did you how'd you come up with this idea for what we're looking at?
Well, this, as we go, I'll talk a little bit about new stuff, but this came out of this idea that we have these new nodes here that create random number generators. So I wanted to find a way to use the random number generators to do interesting stuff. So I just came up with this idea. I'm just going to turn it on so you can see what we'll be kind of working through. And each of these cubes just has a random number generator that tells it to jump up a random amount on a random interval. And so every 0.2 to 0.7 seconds, move up some random amount. And I don't know, physics make it fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
very
we can,
cool.
Cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, I can like take these spheres, you can add a bunch of them, duplicate them over and over. Whoops.
So it saves you from having to keyframe any of that. It's just all a live event.
Yep. Like the entirety of what's happening in this stage is just these, what is this, 15 nodes maybe? That's it.
Yeah,
Just all that.
keyframing that would be a nightmare. I would not want to do that.
Yeah.
And then if someone says, Ashley, make it go faster, make them go higher, you'd have to like do it all over again.
And then quit.
Yep.
And
So
you have
would you-
built-in gravity as well. So you've got gravity working at the same time.
So we have a good question here from Nick Arthur Knight. Look at that. Cool dude there. Can push graphs be used to periodically update transforms?
You know, that's an interesting question. I think technically yes, but functionally no, because a push graph implies constant updates. So every single frame, a push graph will compute itself. So there is no sense of a periodic update. It is a constant update. You can't set up a push graph to update every 10 frames, or if something is at this distance away from your camera or whatever. There's no way to do these kind of if-then kind of logic. If you want to do that, you would use Action Graph. Like Action Graph has nodes that trigger on every frame. It's a tick node, but you can change it to trigger every 10 frames instead of every single frame. So in a technical sense, or in a functional sense, push graphs are basically action graphs with a built-in tick event just built into everything, is kind of how I like to think about them. That might not be true in a very technical implementation sense, but in a day-to-day usage, that's pretty much how they work.
Okay, very cool. I imagine like I'm just curious because you have enabled physics on here. If you were to add more force or speed with the balls here, would they like start to jump in the air?
Yeah.
You don't have to do it now. I was just curious.
Yeah, they should. So there's a good caveat. I don't really know much about the physics system, so I just kind of turned it on and did the most base level implementations. So like there might be a way to make these balls
I want to make them jelly.
elastic.
Yeah, it works great.
Yeah.
Or maybe lighter, like have less mass, but I don't know how to do it.
We could put like the gummy bear shader that we used for like the very first SIGGRAPH courses, and like make these gummy balls, and then they'll just jiggle as they jump.
Yeah,
if you turned off gravity, you would actually probably slam them out of the frame, you know?
Turned up
Look, it's
gravity or
Jen.
down gravity?
Jen's in the chat.
If you turned off gravity, it would probably just, bounce them way up high.
In the
Jen, I know you're busy working on a super cool project. If you want, if you have a few minutes, just jump into, the link to jump in the room with us. It'd be great to have you here if you can. But it is like watching a lot of. And I was going to say this earlier that Devin, your voice along with this this visual, I think you could set up an ASMR channel and you'd be a millionaire on YouTube or Twitch. So you have let me know, and I will subscribe to that channel. Okay, cool. So, so let's dive into it a little bit. So how did you go about creating this masterpiece?
What I'm going to do is we're just going to go through it from the bottom level up, and then we'll get to what this stage is. So the first set of things to do, right, is I just built this little cube, right? This was just in Maya. It's beveled. And when you go to your simulation settings, there's this physics authoring toolbar. That's what's right here. And then I use this to just attach some colliders to this. So you use this one, this green one, dynamic, meaning I'm going to move it, right? So it needs to be a dynamic collider. And I just hit that. And then I went down to wherever those are, rigid body. I set it to this one, convex decomposition, which basically means it's a cheaper type of collider. If it was triangular, it would be every single triangle. For what we're doing, it probably functionally doesn't make sense, but or make a difference, but just you know, game development habits, I'm always trying to like make things as minimal as possible. So I just did that. And this is just using USD. This stage is the cube is the default prim. So now I can drop this cube anywhere I want, and it's going to have all of these physics settings already pre-authored and locked in. So I've locked its rotation so they won't like wiggle left and right. Oh, I'm like gesturing with my hand. I realize you can't see me. The no, don't turn it on. I just realized it's a bad habit.
I don't want anybody to miss it.
Yeah. So yeah, it won't wiggle like if I lock the rotation axis. And then I lock the position so it stays rigid only vertically. Otherwise, you know, they might bump into each other and tip over, and I didn't want to deal with any of that. So the nice thing about the whole USD part of this is all locked in. And now if I go to, you know, if I go open a new stage, I drop this dude in here, his collision's all set up. So if I just hit play, he'll just start working. So what we'll do is now we'll take this single cube in an empty stage, and I'm just going to run through in a very quick sense some of the nodes we'll be using instead of kind of building the whole thing out from scratch, because that honestly will just be tedious. So action graph, as we talked about, is event driven. So I like to use, I hit the tab key to get this little quick search menu, but you could also use this thing over here. So also a new feature we added in 23.2 is improved searching. So I'm going to hit tab and I'm going to hit keyboard event, or just keyboard. So I get this keyboard input event. So now whenever I push, let's say the J key, it's going to do whatever comes out of this press thing. So see, I hit the tab again. I'm going to do random. So this is the whole point. We have these new nodes. So I'm going to do, let's say, a random numeric node. So now every time I hit the J key, it's going to create a random number. And I can set the min and max here. So I'm going to right click on this port and promote it to a constant. Oh, you know what? I don't want that constant. I'm going to make a new one. I'm going to do a, let's see, what is this one? This one's velocity.
Is right clicking on the node a new thing? I don't remember being able to do that before.
Yeah, this might be new. You can right click the ports and then do like, I can promote it
Change
to a
them if you want.
variable,
That's
and then
so
it builds me
cool.
a variable.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I can set it to an existing variable. Like if I had one in here already, I can also convert it so I can lock it in as a float. So then when that's locked in, I can just change it over here.
Oh, so you don't, because I used to have
Yeah.
to like find the node that was like
Yeah.
convert to. You don't have to do that anymore.
The converting you can still do, but you can, if you know this number is always going to be 5 and it's always going to be a float, you can just lock it down as a float and then just type in
Cool.
5 over here. So what are we doing? We're using floats. So I'm going to just write these out here, constant float, just so it's easier to look at, I guess. It's the thing with action graph, there's a lot of ways to do the same thing. I'm going to plug these in. So let's say maximum value, let's do 500 and minimum value of 150. So now every time I hit the J key, it's going to pick a random number between 500 and 150. And it'll be a new random number every time I hit the key. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to drag this cube over. We're going to write an attribute on it. So when you drag this in, all it does is it just automatically picks the prim to write to. You could also just do write prim attribute, the node by itself, and then just click the prim. Like it's just little shortcuts to speed it up. And then because I've specified this prim, this attribute list is already populated with every property on it. So this is a big part about Action Graph in general and USD is everything on your stage is a prim, and everything that's like a number or a value in this list is an attribute. So anything on here, I would use right prim attribute to change. So I know I want to be changing the linear velocity. So if I hit play here and I type 500, you see it pops up for a sec. The reason this number didn't change is I think this is part where I'm like, I'm not sure because I don't use physics that much. I set the simulation settings here to use fabric, which means they're not updating directly in this window, which is why it stays as 500, even though it's technically not moving right now. This also makes the physics run faster, so that's why I turned it on. If that's not true, I'm sorry, but this is what it felt like to me when I was using it. So I'm going to go set the linear velocity, which is somewhere in this list, and it's a long list. I think it's under physics velocity. There it is. The other way you could find that is if I just go down to the attribute I want. If I mouse over it, it might be hard to see in the video, but it says physics : velocity. That's the name of this attribute, and that's the name right here. So we are going to, by mousing over this, I can see the data type. Data types in Action Graph are like the format of the number. So a common one you see is an int, an integer, which is a number with no decimals. And then there's 3 types of numbers with decimals. There's halves, floats, and doubles. And those just mean how big or small that decimal number can get. And if you're never sure, you just kind of look, you just mouse over something. It'll tell you in the parentheses what that format should be. And there's conversions also, so usually they'll work out. So what we have is a vector float, vector f, so it's a float vector. So we're going to do a make 3 vector. So this is going to take, a vector is like a fancy way of saying more than one number. So a position, x, y, and z is a vector. It's x, y, and z. So it's 3 numbers. So it's a 3 vector. And what we're going to do is we want the vertical, the y velocity, which is going to be this number here. So I'm going to plug that into y. And then these I'm going to leave 0. And that's it. So now if I hit the J key, it should be working, but it's not. Oh, that's right. I got to do that. There we go.
Very cool. So you mentioned earlier there's a few ways to obviously do the same thing. Should you always be kind of mindful of performance, when you're trying some of this stuff out, or?
Well, the way you author this isn't usually super performance related. It's mostly just kind of personal preference and style.
Gotcha.
Like
okay.
whether you want these extra nodes here so that you can easily click them, or you can just store them on here.
Good question. I don't know if you could see this.
Can we programmatically add an action graph with an instantiated object? I think I'm going to show you how we do that. I don't know if I would call it programmatically, but we do add instances, and we'll go through that. So maybe that I think you're getting the sense, the dude who asked that, where we're going with this, right? So I have this set up so now whenever I hit the J key, it will randomly add a vertical velocity, and you see it jumps up a different amount each time.
Yeah, I see that.
I can change the value, so I can change the minimum to be whatever 150, the max, and the min to be like 25. So now I've just changed the scale of this velocity. So now the next part of this is this is 1 cube, and if I have 50 of these cubes, I gotta turn this off first. If I have a bunch of these cubes around here, I don't want to have to build this graph 100 times. So what we're going to do is we're going to add instancing support to this. And the way I like to think about instancing is that instancing is like each of these prims on your stage. I have these three, actually 4. We're going to attach a brain to them. And that brain is going to be this action graph. So if I right click and we go to add, and then we do visual scripting, and then it's going to show me every action graph in my stage, or push graph, any kind of we have. And then I select it. So now all of these cubes have a copy of this graph attached to them as a brain. And that's what this part here is. It shows me my action graph. And remember when I made that variable earlier, you can see they each have a copy of that variable. So this cube's variable can be whatever, 6. Let's do 50. And this cube's variable can be a different number. See, it's not 50, it's 0. If I hit play and I hit J, they're all going to do the same. Mostly, see, they're not even going to work right now. And the reason is because even though they have different copies of the brain, the master version of the brain, this guy that we're looking at, is still telling it to write to cube 2. This is hard coded. So it means each of these other guys, their brain is saying change cube 2, not change me, right? The owner of the brain. So we have ways to do that. And if so, I don't have to open up any of these other cubes to change their brain. What I'm doing is I'm changing the master brain that they're all inheriting from. So if I make one change here, those effects happen on all 4 of these. That would be the instance of this graph. So I'm going to go to this graph here that we're already in. And instead of writing to angled cube 2, I'm going to write to graph target perm, which is this special button we have. And graph target is the way in OmniGraph we use to describe right to the thing that owns me, that owns my brain. So the thing that owns my brain is angled cube 3 or angled cube 4. So now if I hit the J key, they're all moving. You'll see they're all moving the same amount because they all have the same random number generator. They're all using the same output from this. Even though they all generate a different random number, the way random numbers work is you have the seed value. So that way it's kind of like, it's not truly random. There's a lot of complicated computer science stuff that is way over my head. But basically the seed number is just, it controls which random number you get, which makes it seem like it's not random, but it still kind of is. So the way we deal with this is we need each of these dudes to have a different random number generated for each of their brains. So we're going to use another graph target kind of thing. So if I just type graph target here, you'll see I have a bunch of nodes that are graph target related. So one of them is this guy, graph target ID. So this creates a unique number for each one of these things that is a graph target. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to plug that into the seed value. So this guy's graph target might be 3,507,000, his ID number. And this guy's ID number might be 17. So now they're all going to generate their own random numbers. So now when I hit J, you see they're all a little bit different. I'll crank these back up.
Wild.
Let's see, some go higher, some go lower. And I only have these 5 nodes, and I'm still just hitting the J key, and they're all doing something a little bit different. And I could take this and make, I gotta turn the simulation off. It doesn't work well when you duplicate while it's running, because everything's like suddenly on top of itself and the physics gets all mad, like interpenetration.
I like how you've personified them. It makes me love them and want to root for them a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, you want to name them all next?
I like just calling them dudes. Dudes with brains.
Yep.
Should
That's
put
the
little heads on
California
them.
in me coming out.
I used to be a teacher, and a big thing about being a teacher is you lose your supplies all the time. And I saw a teacher post randomly the other day that she named one of her glue sticks Derek. It doesn't matter if a glue stick goes missing. but it matters if
Derek's
Derek,
gone.
the glue stick, goes missing. So I think it's really important we personify our inanimate objects so we care
Yeah.
about them a little bit more. Look at them go.
So
That's really cool.
So right, that's in a pretty brief way, like how I took a simple random node and made it create a random number that's attached to a physics related.
I was going to highlight that too, Edmar.
That was funny. Nice one, Leo.
Yeah. So this is all like in my little, temp scene, right? So I'm going to go into the other scene and we'll just walk through how this is all kind of wrapped up in a prettier package, right? So let me turn my light off so it doesn't get in the way. So I'm going to.
And obviously, it's running in real time as well. Just to point out that it's running in a real time renderer. Like it would work in path tracing, but it wouldn't run like a game engine, like a real time thing, would it? It would. I mean, it may, depending on
it's
how.
Not that
but it's really
complicated,
designed for. Oh, it's not.
Yeah,
pretty
my path
smooth,
tracer's not too bad. It's a little blurry, but
40
it's
frames per
pretty
second
simple.
in path tracing is impressive.
Yeah, I'm sure if I added some lights in here, it might slow down. But you're right. Yeah, it's all real time.
Great.
Just like a game engine. I like to think of Action Graph as a way to shove a miniature game engine into your 3D viewport. It's like shoving a game engine into your Maya viewport sometimes is how I like to think about it.
Yeah, now that you're speaking on this, actually, Matt from NJIT, he's a professor over there. Him and I collaborated on a program that he did, and we used Action Graph to basically make a one-to-one of Unity's ball game, where you like pick up cubes with a ball, and we made it all in Action Graph and Omniverse. And he teaches it to his students to teach them visual scripting.
Yeah,
that is awesome. I didn't know you guys did that.
Yeah, it was so fun. We did it like over winter break last year.
Oh, wow. We're going to have him on a future live stream soon. Working on a blog with him. He's got a couple cool extensions to show off. So
Ooh, invite me. I want to come.
You are totally invited.
When I was building this, I was thinking I want to build like the old school lunar lander game where you're just like changing the velocity of the thing. I think that would be fun to try next.
That was so frustrating, but awesome.
Yeah. So this is now like I have a bunch of these cubes. I was just really careful in duplicating them and arranging them so that they're semi-random. But the core of it is still the same thing, this random numeric that we were using to make a vector to drive the velocity, but we're using graph target. And the only real addition that I've added in here, which admittedly is a little hacky because the way Action Graph works is we don't have a great way to talk to somewhere else in this graph without having all the graphs listen to that. So we have this event system where something, if I'll make one really quick, custom event. So I can send this custom event that says like, I don't know, maybe move up or something. But right now, basically every single thing in the stage is going to respond to this event. So I had to get a little creative with this. So another one of our random generators is random Gaussian. And it just, if you give it like a middle point, a mean, it'll just give you a nice bell curve fall off with the standard deviation. This is all like statistical math. And I just Googled standard deviation and saw the numbers and I just copied them. So don't look to me for what exactly these do, but if you Google it, it'll make sense.
We got a question from Data Juggler here. How come some of the cubes are not slanted? Is that just because they're random?
Oh, they are actually. The perspective is funny. They're all slanted. Here, let me drop a new one in here. I slanted them in such a way so they're slanted off axis from the actual faces of the cube, and that way the balls don't get stuck. If I did it, I tried other ways, and basically the balls get stuck in these corners. So this was the way that made the most sense. I could go into this USD file and make them flat and not slanted, right? Or I could make them into pyramids, or you could do, I don't know, like a sphere on the top instead. And the nice thing is I wouldn't have to change anything because of the USD referencing. The updates would just work their way through. Maybe I'll show that at the end. I also hand placed all the ones along the edge here because I didn't want the balls to get stuck in the outer corner. But I did build, just a little side shoot. Same thing. I'm using some random numerics to randomly rotate them. So this is pick a random number between 0 and 3, and then multiply it by 90. So I get 90-degree increments to basically rotate it. And then I have some nodes here to just find all the available prims, so I don't have to like manually click them all. But I have it disconnected. But if I turn it back on, I hit the J key, all these cubes in the middle will just randomly rotate. It looks like some of them are getting lost. I haven't used this graph in a little while, so there might be some bugs in it. But this is also a great use of ActuGraph. You can like automate really routine, boring stuff. Like instead of having to click this and like physically rotate it, I'm just randomly rotating all of them, some random number. Load this now, so it's not all busted.
Kind of reminds me of how Replicator works.
Oh yeah, does it work that way? I've never used it.
I don't know for sure if Replicator is using OmniGraph, but I remember Paul Callender had used Action Graph to randomize scratches when we used Replicator for annotating scratches on a car part, and it reminded me of how he did that. He just randomized the rotation and the placement of the scratch on the car part with just a couple of clicks. It was really easy.
Yeah, and all these new random number generators are really great for that kind of stuff of building seemingly complex stuff with just a few nodes, and just random numbers really give everything a lot more realism and character and dynamic feel to it. So excuse me, this is random numeric, so you have a min and max, but random Gaussian is just a different way to make random numbers with a different distribution. These will be like, I can't draw, it's like a bell curve, and this will just be more noise. So the only real trick I did in here, we have the same idea. We have the little brain target, and we have the unique ID for the brain target. But I have this running on tick, but I don't want it every single frame to be telling these cubes to jump up. So I tell it every 5 frames, update itself. And then the first thing it does is it checks if this Boolean is true. And if it is, it passes through. And then immediately the next thing it does is turns this Boolean off so that this stops working again. So this just stops running. And then I build this random number, which I then use as a delay, so that basically this is going to run. It's going to wait until it says it's allowed to run. And when it is allowed to run, it opens up for 1 frame. So it kind of acts like a gate that I open and close really quick. Boop, 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 boop. And then once that is generated, I randomly pick a number to wait. Even though this is ticking here, meaning it's constantly asking, can I go through the gate? Can I go through the gate? This guy is still thinking, oh, you told me to wait 2 seconds. And then when I'm done waiting 2 seconds, I'm going to go this way. If I pass this tick straight into the delay node, so if I told this node, hey, every frame, do something, and then this guy's saying, no, yeah, I got to wait 2 seconds before I do something, things get weird. So that's why this gate is here. And then at the very end, it turns the condition back on to true to open this gate just for a split second so that it can turn itself back off again. Does that make sense?
Very cool.
Yeah.
Glad we're recording it so we can follow along later,
Yeah.
The tick function's like a little toddler and the delay function's the mom. You just gotta wait a little bit longer.
That's it. And then that's how all of these will randomly fire on different intervals. So like if you look at this one here, it's like waiting, and then when it's its turn, oh, there it goes.
We could change this to make it into a game, so they're all on different keyboard inputs. So you have to like get the keyboard, you have to press the different ones to try to get the ball through the maze.
I mean, like this is what's cool about. Yeah, I could even do it so when I click on them, they jump up, right?
Yes,
you could do that.
Yeah.
Or they
Fun.
could do something where when a ball bumps into them, they jump up. There's all these events that you can use to trigger these kind of moments, not just this kind of constant tick firing that I'm doing. And then, as we talked about when we started, the way to make this dynamic, right, is all these numbers are now just data. So if I want these all to run really, really fast, instead of a 2-second mean, I can do like a half a second. And then they all should just start going off over and over and over again. Eventually they'll all catch up because their delays will figure itself out. The problem is now is every half a second, some of them get triggered too quickly and then they end up like triple jumping. So, you know, maybe I have to change the timing, or maybe you would change the graph logic so it doesn't do a Gaussian one. It does a minimum and a max, or maybe the distribution deviation is different. I have it at 2. If I set it to 1, I think they'll be a little closer to each other. So now they're a lot more energetic. I could change the min and max so I could change them to like, say 250. So now they'll just jitter a little bit instead of a lot. That just took 2 number changes, right? I didn't have to sit there and redo 80 keyframes.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Very cool to iterate. And we got a question from Data Juggler about audio.
Can it play sound? It can, actually, yeah. There are sound events. So if you just type sound, these are all the sound nodes. So if I did play sound here, you have to have a sound prim in your stage. So I would create one. I like to use the right click to do this, but you could also do it up here, right? Audio, pick a sound that you want. You would attach a sound file, I think. I don't know what we do. We have MP3 wave files. You'd pick that, pick the sound file you want, and then, like if I was using my earlier example, keyboard input, I could do the J key. So every time I hit the J key, some sound is played. Or you could attach that maybe at the somewhere over here. So every time it jumps up, it plays a boing sound or something. And then the control of that sound is on the sound prim. So there's a bunch of control for volume, which I think we call gain. Yeah. And then looping. If you set the loop count to -1, yeah, -1. It's like an infinite loop. So you could do like music that way. But yeah, again, it's all, remember, these are all prims and everything in here is an attribute. And if you have an attribute, you can write to it. And if you use this search tool, either in the node library here, you just type sound, you'll find all the stuff related to sounds right here.
That's cool. I had no idea you could do that.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been adding a lot of little bits. Most of this is driven by our work with car configurators. We've been using a lot of action graph. So all the missing bits, right? That's kind of what I was describing when I started. I just sit here and noodle with it all day and go, oh, you know what? There's no way to play sounds. Let's go add that to the to-do list. And then since I mentioned it, I can go to this cube that we're using. And I don't know, let's just add a sphere to it. I don't know. I'll make the sphere a collider. That should work. And I save it.
Make it crazy.
Let's see. It might jump out from the cubes now that I did that, because I don't know a way to tether them. So now I have spheres everywhere.
Ooh.
Instead of just the cubes, right?
Look at
So
those
when
real-time reflections.
Yeah, but see now all the little spheres get stuck in these corners. So that's kind of why I picked the slanty thing that I did.
I like
That's
Eric's
cool,
question
though.
there. Are the collision events available as triggers?
They are actually. If you go to, where is it? Windows Simulation Demo Scenes, and you'll get this extra tab here. Takes a little minute. There is which one is it?
It's in triggers.
Triggers. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of triggers for this. And there's a really cool conveyor one.
I've been showing that one off a lot.
Yeah, so the conveyor one has these invisible meshes here that you can see it right there, that little purple one. So it triggers, and then the graphs all respond to querying what triggered it, and then checking the material in this case, and then if the material is green, to rotate to this degree and then reset itself. So yeah, window, simulation, demos, go to triggers, and you can find all the tutorials for that.
Oh, it's important to know that you need to be in 2023 USD Composer, either 0.1.1 or 0.2.0. I bring this up because I was talking to someone in Discord earlier, and they were looking for like the configurator extension, and they were working still in 2022 USD Composer. So make sure you have updated to the latest release to see all this stuff.
Yeah,
everything. Well, make sure you update anyway. You know, make sure you update anyway.
You should definitely update anyway. But just in case, some people don't. Sometimes I, you know, for some applications, I take a little bit to update because I'm always like scared of bugs and I don't want to break my project. So I understand why they don't update. But yeah, if you're looking for this type of stuff and you don't see it, especially the triggers for OmniGraph or things like the configurator, those were released with Kit 105. So you need to update.
So the other thing I found that I could do, which was fun, was I just started attaching. Whoops, can't do that when it's running. Here, I'll do it like this. I attach sphere lights to all these cubes, and then you can do like a little disco ball kind of thing.
Yeah, see, this is why it's important to have artists who are also technical, because we create cool stuff like this.
Yeah, I would. There's probably a way to do a collision, like a spherical collision, without the actual mesh here. So I could hide the actual little green sphere and just have a light source. But you know, it's pretty cool. It'll light up the all the spheres around. You could
probably make some MDL shader that does that and attach it to a sphere.
Yeah, that too. A lot of ways to get it done. And then I bet even path tracing's still not too bad. It's a little blurry, but it's not the worst.
It's like a rave for a little ball.
Yeah.
RTX is where it's at.
I can see this being very useful for a crowd scene. You know, like if you had an animation for a crowd.
Oh yeah.
Let's say you're doing a stadium, like a soccer stadium or a football stadium, and you know you just want these low res people in the crowd to like bubble about a bit or do a Mexican wave. You could just set them all to, you know, you would never be able to keyframe all that, but you could set them with a bit of intelligence, right? To just do a giant animation that you wouldn't have to worry about keyframing.
Not even a giant animation. I could see a way where you could compartmentalize it so they would randomly play one of 4 animations. And then they would all be doing something a little different, like their idol, and then their cheer or something. And then you could do some other event that just sweeps through them all, like by position or something that triggers the wave.
So Nick Arthur Knight asked a really good question that we get pretty often. They said specifically, are the brain properties exposed to Python? But this is actually a question we get a lot in Discord and the forums, if OmniGraph has Python properties.
So that's a tough one. I don't know Python, right? So I don't know the right way to phrase it. As far as I know, everything is available in Python. Like all of these things we just did, like this random, there's an API for it that you could query through Python instead of doing a node. The way I've written an attribute, this is also in Python. Like I think you would do it in the script editor. You guys know Python, right?
Yeah, you could do an extension or you could do the script editor.
Where's the script editor?
So Maddie actually did a series on this maybe like almost a year ago now, where he created an action graph using Python. So it is possible. I'm not sure how well it's documented, so there might be some blockers, but I would definitely encourage someone to give it a try.
There's also this, we have this node, you have to turn on the extension to do it, and it's not on by default. And I should warn you, the reason it's not on by default is because this runs Python script codes without any like guardrails. So you could, I don't know, if you just copy pasted what someone gave you, they could do mean things to your computer.
Wow.
But you can run Python code in this, and you can add outputs and use Python code to do all your logic.
Cool.
We use this when there are no nodes to do what we want, but we still want to use a node interface. So I'll ask the people smarter than me to give me little Python snippets to put in here. Like the sounds we used to need a script node to do it. So the script nodes sometimes are like a nice way for us to make a shopping list of oh, this, I don't want to use script nodes. I need a way to support this, natively. So let's find a way to eliminate this script node that we're using to play a sound, for example.
I think what's really impressive is looking at it in reverse. You said you don't know Python, and I don't know Python that well, but you built this incredible tool that's running in real time without any scripting. So it's I think the learning curve isn't too high, and it seems like almost like a fun, like almost like a game engine where you can build things on the fly without knowing having to know any code at all.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, your colleague back at headquarters is asking if you'd be open to sharing the scene.
Yeah, I mean, can you read it? The path's right up here. I'll
Take a
send it to
screenshot, Jen.
I'm gonna go grab it now.
Let's steal it out of his folder. But is the public going to be able to play with something like this?
Yeah. We've been, if you go into Windows browsers examples, there are some visual scripting examples, which you guys probably have shown in the past. So I was going to add this to this thing. I'd like to keep adding more. Part of our current thinking is we need to make some better samples for Action Graph, just like you were saying, Ashley, because it's just, you get lost really easily right now.
Yeah, Haskell and I were working on that for a little bit, and then we got put on pause because of all of the big feature updates that were coming with Kit 105. So hopefully Haskell and I can get back on that and help you guys out, because that'd be great to have some more samples, especially just showing like small, like I love these. I love the light bulb and I love the labyrinth maze, but I think sometimes if you are not familiar with Action Graph and you go to open those up, they can be a little overwhelming.
It's just like a wall of nodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'd be cool to have some small use cases for like 4 or 5 nodes. Like I really love showing off how to create a button in the viewport, because not only can you create something that's cool and shows up automatically, but you also can show off a couple of examples of using like bools and adding and multiplying, and it's not as overwhelming to look at, I think.
Yeah, the whole the next step for this that I was thinking was buttons on the screen, and you click it and it spawns like 100 more spheres.
Yes,
randomly, and then they all rain down or something.
I love buttons on my screen too. I want more buttons on my screen.
It'd be cool, actually. I was thinking, you know, a bingo, when you have that kind of things in the air and you press
we could play bingo on a live stream.
That would be fun. And we could put maybe people's usernames and as the balls in the chat, and then
there you go.
Anyway, a lot of cool ideas. I think
give out GeForce cards or something, RTX cards.
Don't put us on the hook for that yet.
This is the last time on the stream, Devin. Nice to see you. This is great though. So where would the community go to follow up on questions on Action Graph? We have
Discord.
Discord server. We have a channel on Action Graph. Let me try to quickly post that.
It's called OmniGraph, actually.
I thought we also had one for Action Graph. No, let me see. Hold on.
I think it's just OmniGraph.
Yeah.
The server just is all encompassing for all the different graphs.
For all the graph types, yeah.
We should make on a separate channel or a sub channel.
Well, like
it's fine.
Everything I showed here, most of these nodes are available in push graphs, right? So I think it's important to keep them together. Like the only thing in here that wouldn't be in a push graph is the delay and the tick, because these are time and event based, but everything else is, or the branch, this also wouldn't be in a push graph. But yeah, I know I should probably answer more often in there, but usually the other users are pretty good about helping out before I even notice there's a question.
We have an amazing community. One of the beautiful things about this job is working with all the people who are leveraging this technology for their work. I just posted the invite for the OmniGraph channel on the Omniverse Discord server. So that should bring you right to the channel. If you post on there, feel free to tag one of us, especially if you are not getting a reply from another user. We'll be happy to help. I will go to Devin's house on your behalf and bring him some coffee, and we'll get him to answer all your questions. We'd like to thank Devin so much for putting together this great example for us. Really, really fun and informative to look at some of the new features, new and old, as part of OmniGraph's Action Graph feature set. Ashley and Richard, thank you so much for joining us as well. I think, actually, Ashley, when's your next stream? What are you working on?
I'm going to be streaming this upcoming Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. I'm just going to be creating a combo box in Python in Omniverse. So if you're curious how to get started in Python, if you're not familiar with it, we'll just create some simple UI. We'll make a combo box and have a selection of different things we can pick from. So it'll be easy.
That sounds amazing. Very cool. And I'll post a link to our Ed event calendars. You can check out the upcoming streams, add to your calendar. Richard, what are you up to? How are things looking on the forums? I know Isaac's pretty busy, right?
Yeah, we had an explosion on the Isaac Sim. 2023.1.0, I think, just got released.
Big release
officially. And I've never seen so many enthusiastic questions. So I guess that's a good thing. So I'm going to be downloading that as well and trying to get into that a little bit more. Yeah, it's a great program.
Very cool. Speaking of cool things, hello to Omniverse Ambassador for the community, Michael Wagner of Epolog. Very cool to have you here, as always. All right, cool. So I think next week what we're doing on this time slot is we're going to hopefully cover Autodesk workflows. So if you're a member of the community and you want to show off your Autodesk USD workflows, get in touch with me, edmar@nvidia.com, or just on Discord. And it'll be great to have you on as a guest. I think we're going to have a few people show some stuff off if everything works out as planned. Otherwise, meet us up on Discord, come to the forums where you'll also find Richard a lot. And we'll be happy to answer your questions. This has been a great hour. Thank you so much again, Devin, Ashley, and Richard. And to all of you out there watching, thanks for all the great questions, comments. And Jennifer, get back to your project. I don't know what you're doing watching this right now. You're in big trouble.
We summoned her by saying coffee. She had no choice.
Yeah, I did. I said the magic word. If you ever meet Jen in real life, you have to bring coffee with you, or else you'll never hear the end of it. So, all right, everybody, have a great rest of the day.
Bye.
Bye, guys.